Talking Law is the program you're listening to here on Radio 97 for this Thursday morning with Despina Priala from Priala Legal. If you have a question, and there's always a legal question or two that people are asking about and interested in, then send it to us. Go to the website radio97.com.au. There's a couple of ways of getting in contact with us there. Send the question through. We're happy to ask it for you on your behalf. radio97.com.au.
Thank you, Wayno and Despina. We're now talking about the Queensland government exclusively. So they're currently reviewing the manufactured home park legislation, and they are asking for the public to get in touch and have their say across the next month. But you think in particular this will have an effect on our over 50s looking at possibly purchasing a home in a park. So could you explain this legislation and what exactly we're looking at?
Yes, I will. I would love to. And I've actually been in this space since 2007. So I really understand manufactured home parks really, really well. So manufactured home parks are not retirement villages, but they're an alternative to what we call, I suppose, downsizing. So it is for over 50s in Queensland, over 55s in New South Wales. And what you do is that you essentially are buying a home. We call it a chattel, but it's your home, but you don't own the land. So it's a manufactured home park that has manufactured homes within different sites within the park. And the park, you could say it's a resort. They do provide, the park owner that is, provides communal facilities. Some of them are fairly basic. Some of the more very expensive parks and resorts are very elaborate. So you could have just a basic pool and, some gym areas or equipment. Some of them have bowling greens. Some of them have tennis courts. Some of them have saunas, spas. Some of them have libraries. So, yeah, it's communal facilities provided. But essentially, it's a good alternative because generally over the years, we found that the value of these homes are not as expensive as, for example, buying real estate, because you're buying land and the home on top of the land. Here you're just buying the home. Now you buy the home, you essentially get, say, a perpetual lease for all intents and purposes. So you sign a site agreement, you pay your site rent regularly as you're required to. There are park rules that you need to comply with about how you can use the site, any improvements to your home, how you can use communal facilities, yes, by you and your guests and occupiers. And it's a really good alternative. So when people are downsizing, they generally look at a unit or a townhouse, which is a body corporate situation, and there's body corporate levies, retirement village, or manufactured home park, and that's what we're talking about. So understand the legislation really well. And recently, the Queensland government issued surveys that were completed by park owners and consumers to understand the consumer concerns a bit more about these manufactured home parks and some of the concerns raised by consumers. And remember, this is really driven, I think, by consumer protection, which a lot of our legislation is driven by consumer protection. And you're dealing with a demographic that's also older as well. So it's really important. And the government has said, look, we're going to listen to what we found out, and they've collated a summary of all the data that they've collected and received from the surveys and submissions. There is still an opportunity for park owners and homeowners and other members of the community to submit further commentary and feedback up until the 26th of June. You can still do that. But I thought we'd talk about some of the data that was collected and some of the concerns that they've raised, which will then lead me to always to this point, which I'll generally get to, and that is that people who buy into manufactured home parks should always be represented and should get that advice about their site agreement. And we're talking about the concerns raised about the contract you sign with the park owner. So when you buy a home, you've got a sale contract to buy the home. But then you go into this arrangement with the park owner once you own your home, because you're going to live there, about things to do with the resort, the park, the rules, and the rent you pay. How many people can occupy the home? Can you have pets in the home? Can you list it for sale? Can you advertise it publicly or not? And there are restrictions in certain parks about that. Some parks don't allow pets as well, for example. But one of the biggest concerns is rent increase. So when you sign a site agreement, you know from the day you're going to move in, okay, this is my site rent I can afford. $200 a fortnight or $250 a fortnight or whatever it is that's been disclosed. But what is of more concern is the site rental increases that apply. And typically you see a lot of people go into these site agreements without getting advice. So therefore they don't understand their full financial commitment long term, because there are rent increases and reviews in every manufactured home park, but they're all different. And I guess this is where all these concerns come about, because they're not all consistent and uniform. So for example, you can have your site rent increased each year through a few different methods. For example, CPI. Okay, so people generally understand, but I don't think a lot of people realize CPI is pretty high at the moment.
It's about over 7%. Yeah.
Exactly. So then a fixed percentage. Some of them might have 3 or 4%. So given the CPI, you probably prefer a lower fixed percentage, whereas when CPI used to be 2% or thereabouts, you'd rather the fixed percentage. So you need to understand that or have it explained to you. Some parks just close to my office, I won't name them, have the higher of CPI and 8%.
Yeah, wow.
Yep.
And that's every year. That's astronomical. I think that's unreasonable. And then, of course, there's this market review that happens. And that's why it's important to look at the terms of your site agreement. Market review of the rent is, well, the park owner sends a notice to all the park owners at certain times they're allowed to say, well, I think the market rent is this, which is reflective of the current market. And you have to agree to it. And if you don't, there's a process to dispute it, but that's a process that some homeowners don't take up. And it's important to look at the site agreement, because sometimes this market review happens every 3 years. Sometimes it happens every 10 years, right? And that's why I say every park is different, which is why you need someone to explain to you what is your long-term financial commitment. And a lot of these homeowners, which has come out from the survey, that they go into these parks thinking it's a great alternative, and they are for some, but come year 3 or 4, they can't afford it anymore. And then this is the other concern. When you sell your home, right, if you have to move into another alternate accommodation like aged care or somewhere else, so you have to move out, but you haven't sold the home yet, you still pay your site rent, okay, to the park owner, and that's ongoing. So the government's talking about, well, should we have a buyback scheme? So should we have, say, within 6 months of you moving out, but you haven't sold it, and you haven't been able to sell it, we'll buy it back from you, say within 6 months or 12 months. And I think that's something that should be talked about, because that's something that happened in the retirement village legislation when it was overhauled a couple of years ago, where the park operators or the village operators have a buyback scheme if they don't sell the unit within a certain time frame. I think it's 18 months. So yeah, I wanted to raise it because I think that if you are in a manufactured home park now, or you're thinking about going into a manufactured home park, either way, you should always get advice before you do it, before you sign that site agreement. And if you are in a park and you're thinking about selling and going into another park, again, you should be getting advice about, well, what are the terms of that park? Because they are all different.
Definitely.
Yeah, and of course that they're doing the research at the moment. In fact, for another month, I believe the survey is open, so people can still there's still time to have your feedback and have your say.
Yes, there is, and up until the 26th of June, and we'll give the website in a minute. But to think that there's close to 24,000 manufactured home sites in parks in Queensland, that's huge. And it does affect a massive demographic of our society and community. So that's why I've raised it this morning. But yes, up until the 26th of June. So there is a website here that you can email and you can upload your submissions. You can go online. They say it's around 30 minutes, could be less. But if you have some real concerns and you want to contribute, they close on the 26th of June. The website is, it's a funny name, but it's basically chde.qld.gov.au, and you should be able to find it from there in terms of the feedback on manufactured home parks.
Easy, and we can share that to our Facebook page as well. Despina, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Talking Law. And quickly, before we wrap, where can people go if they want to ask you a question directly?
Yep, so they can phone the office 55291 294 or email info@prialalegal.com.au, and then we'll have all these uploaded on YouTube again at the end of the week.
Thank you so much, Despina and Wayne.
And we'll do it all again next week.
See you then, guys.
Are you confused about legal jargon? Do you need legal advice but don't know where to turn? Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97. Despina, a leading lawyer with over 20 years of experience, will demystify the law and provide practical advice to help you navigate legal issues. Whether it's a family matter, a property dispute, or a business concern, Talking Law has got you covered. Don't miss out on this valuable resource. Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97.